Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Mark L. Christensen joins us today to talk about his book, Fungus Theory of Conscious Growth, which explores the idea that the universe is wired to evolve life toward higher consciousness, and that humanity may be just one step in a much longer journey beyond Earth. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Mark L. Christensen is a lifelong explorer of ideas, driven by a deep curiosity about cosmology, physiology, and sociology. With a passion for connecting science, creativity, and big-picture thinking, Mark has spent decades developing insights and innovations that challenge conventional boundaries. His work invites us to rethink how we grow, evolve, and understand our place in the universe. You can learn more about Mark and his work at marklchristensen.com. Well, hi, Mark. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Hello there, Sherry, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I guess to get us started, why don't you tell us what is Fungus Theory of Conscious Growth about, and what was your inspiration for writing the book?
Two great questions. Fungus theory of conscious growth is an observation of all the evidence that kind of starts to show what humanity is all about, why it is on Earth, and how it got here, and the possibilities of where it's going after Earth. So that's the simple description of all the information and evidence that's in the book. And I wasn't really inspired to write it. It's not anything that, I'm going to think of this thing and put it together and, I feel so inspired, I'm going to write it.
Yeah.
I'm a conceptual artist, a screenplay writer, and a songwriter. So you're always, gathering evidence for your material, whether it's a science fiction screenplay or the next pop song or anything like that. So I think what happened was after a life of this, your subconscious does a lot of work for you. And one day it presented this concept that I thought, well, gosh, it just couldn't be that simple. And this physiological thing happened too. My body the stress left my body that I carried all my life. And I thought, oh no, something was weird is happening. And it caused me into going into the computer and do research on it. And I just basically a channeling process started.
Yeah.
And it took me 8 years to finish it. But, I put it all together. It's just amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a long time, but probably not because you had so much research. I mean, once you got into it, it's like you're going down a rabbit hole kind of, there's more, there's more, there's more.
Oh, it was growing like a fungus. And it was validating so many things, and it opened up so many other questions that were continuously validating itself. The domino effect, you go into this trance for about a year or two when you're doing the dump, and then you take a couple of years to figure out how to organize it. And then what is this really telling me? So it's been quite a process. So it wasn't anything that I was inspired to do until after I realized that something had told me to look in this direction. And guess what? You're going to have to spend a lot of time here. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to go get a degree in science at 56 years old and learn how to do this, which I'm now well into my own master's, course and degree. But
Yeah.
that was my initial thought. I mean, I'm not going to, I'm a screenplay writer. What is this science thing hitting me in the back of the head?
Oh my goodness. Wow. I never would have guessed. I mean, you sound like a scientist to me, although, it wasn't so technical that there are a lot of technical terms in it and such, but the way you lay it out is, I mean, people can actually understand it if they spend time with it. And
that's good to know.
It's a thought process. I mean, to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm master's degree level now. I don't have a degree from a college, but if you spend 8-10 years, indulging in something obsessively, you're going to, so I guess I am a scientist now, but that wasn't any of my intention in life. So, but the book, the content is basically just facts, evidence, and historical events that's drawing a more clearer picture of what's going on. And not only with today, but within the latest development of humanity and the technologies, and how we got to that point to be able to stand up and use our hands to build this technology is kind of the forensic evidence of what's going on. And then it also kind of describes from today what's probably going to happen, as technologies develop.
Yeah.
And as the book describes, in the end, we won't have an Earth. So what does that mean? That's the kicker right there. That means that, we're building our own Earth, whether it's a spaceship or the concept of going to another Earth in another solar system is potential, but it doesn't have the guarantee that a spaceship does. Yeah.
Right. Let's back up a little bit and maybe start by telling us about presenting humanity as fungal spores, agents of conscious expansion. How does that reshape our role in evolution?
Easy answer. Today, we're much more conscious and aware than we were when we were, say, in Roman times,
Mm.
right? And then even, a few thousand years earlier than Egyptian times. So in 1,000 years from now, and you're watching it really today because of AI really explode, you're seeing it forensically produce a conscious growth. And that is the actual product that I think the universe is constructing. It's the growth of consciousness from nothing to extremely intelligent in trillions of years from now. So,
Yeah.
why humans are a spore is because that growth process of consciousness can only be grown so much on a terrestrial plane. And once everything here is discovered and you're watching sociology react today, once all that is played out, you can never go back. So you're always moving forward with what you learn consciously, and that's the growth process. So
Hmm.
eventually, humans are going to run out of things to do terrestrially, and we're forced to do it because of the temperature of the sun, but we're forced to leave here. And to do that, it's going to take a tremendous amount of calculating and technology. And that is the system, just in a nutshell. And if you can accept that, the inevitability of that, then you understand your place in it. And then, if that success with humanity, when it is off the planet and slowly being destroyed by the sun, we will be then considered a spore of the fungus that was left behind to burn. And it happens every 60 seconds in the universe. Every 60
Mm.
seconds, a star explodes,
Hmm.
destroying its solar system.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the sun. Of course, the sun will naturally die out in what, 5 billion years or so. But maybe evolution is more time sensitive than that, or it could be, depending on, self destruction, mass, a few other things. What role do those constraints play in the time sensitivity of things and of us being able to evolve to that level to get off the earth?
Well, the fact that you and I are talking through technology right now is an enforced process. So we're not really doing it. We're just
Mm.
discovering one thing at a time. And I call it the oh, duh process. Like, well, what do you do now? Oh, duh, do that. And I think that this biological system relies on that because whoever designed this, God or whatever you want to call it, wasn't going to design you and I to become the thing that could end it,
Mm.
because we are it. We are a part of this, not automatic, but an enforced action process to develop technologies.
Let's talk about the idea that technology could become a life form that marks a significant shift in how we define consciousness. And I think we're already seeing a little bit of that right now. How far along are we?
Yeah, you have to really zoom back and see the beginning of Earth and the end of Earth, and then things start to make sense of our place in it. And technology is going to replace the Earth. If we don't do that, we're all going to burn with the Earth. And that sounds terrible, but that is already on the calendar
Hmm.
and an absolute. So we're supposed to react to that. The fact that, everything that's recorded here, every event, every emotional reaction, every wonderful family and human being, the memory of that is scheduled for incineration. So how do we avoid that? That's the task. And technology is going to replace Earth. I have a character in my book called the Tin Can Man and the Tin Can. For our Earth to be successful in this process, all you need is one. That's why I've minimized it down to a tin can man in a tin
Hmm.
can. And that tin can has to be of certain technical advancements, and so does the tin can man himself in order to live in that tin can. And this is for eternity. So we
Mm.
can't just like fly away in an airplane. It literally has to be designed to last for eternity. Otherwise, if we leave Earth and successfully do that, and you live, say, only 1 million years, which is a blink of an eye, we can calculate that here on Earth, how long a million years is. It's nothing. If you're only going to live a million years post terrestrial Earth, then why leave it all? So
Mm.
it's even more compounded that we work technologically to make sure that everybody exists in the story of all that was.
Yeah. When I first read about the Tin Can Man, I pictured this shuttle ejecting from the main, spacecraft. I
You mean
probably
from
didn't.
like a mothership?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Just
Yeah,
my
those are
brain,
great. Those are great visual areas. You're doing great. I think you're capable of understanding some of this. Um,
Yeah.
but when you break it down to the what's the most minimal thing you need for humanity to survive the encompassing doom of its own Earth? Just one man in a tin can, and there's requirements for that to sustain itself for eternity, which is self reproduction.
Hmm.
Probably not eating food anymore. You're probably living off radiation. There's all kinds of things in the book that explain the potential for living in space forever.
Yeah, yeah. One question I had while I was reading, and let me see if I can put this right, but are we the only galaxy, I guess, that is going through this? You know what I'm saying? Or
Yes,
trying to say?
it's the ultimate question. There is no relevant proof of extraterrestrial life forms on Earth. If there are, they're well hidden. But it's kind of like you have this Big Bang, and then you have trillions of galaxies that we can see, and then trillions and trillions more we cannot see. How is it possible that Earth is the only, existence of intelligent life growth?
Right.
It's egotistical, and rightfully so, because we need to be proud of ourselves that we're, doing all this. And I also think that systematically, the galactic system itself assures that where anything would become potential conscious growth like humans, does it alone, because with help, it's unearned technology and it's unearned conscious growth. And that can lead to disaster when we're past the existence of Earth. So I think even if there are aliens, they know this because they've
Mm.
survived their planet and they know not to come down to Earth and completely contaminate our growth process, which we need to own that
Oh,
ourselves.
yeah.
We have to do it ourselves. You wouldn't take a grade school student and just hand it a degree or a master's degree. It has to be earned.
Yeah. Don't interfere is basically the unspoken rule, I guess, don't interfere with,
Right, or make it really galactically hard. So we're way far away from the other planet that's doing this or that has done it. So the process of conscious growth is to, do it all ourselves. And you can see with, every airplane crash, every seatbelt invention that we're becoming more conscious and more aware of technologies to survive daily life, which is the process of surviving daily life eventually from your own Earth. And
hmm
everyone's a contributor. Every human being, handicapped or otherwise, are real true contributors to the conscious growth of being able to survive the end of Earth.
Yeah. You talk about technology evolving and maybe even replacing humanity. Tell us a little bit about slime mold. What makes slime mold such a useful example, especially when it comes to like intelligence without a brain?
Right. So just think conceptually that everything is one large fungus producing a spore, and that spore is human, which has evolved last. So if you look at slime mold, the behavior of slime mold, each cell in the slime mold communicates to one another to go search for food. And there's visual examples of this rapidly happening in a petri dish where fungus will find the food source and they work together in finding it. And it's almost like a brain working.
Mm.
So if you take that same slime mold and start to divide it up in different life forms, for instance, ocean life, and then maybe just ferns and flowers on Earth, there's a split in that original slime mold where part of it goes on the land, part of it goes into the water. It's still the same fungus, is the thing. So
hmm
once a vertebrae and a head is configured in the water in a fish, the fish it survivalistically needs to get out of the water so it becomes amphibious. Meanwhile, on land, you have insects pollinating the planet and plant life for that animal to have food outside the water. That's kind of a weird construction
Mm.
because you can't just have amphibious life. What's it going to feed on? So it's a self consuming fungus. The fungus says, well, if I'm going to get off this planet, which is its initial primary goal, I need to be able to stand up, free my hands, and build technology.
Mm.
So it starts early. It becomes just flowers and insects, and then fish, and then amphibian, and then mammalian life forms, and then eventually bipedalism, which is freeing its hands. The fungus goes, yay, I've reached, an ability to use my hands. It starts building the technology because it kind of intuitively knows, like the slime mold, reaching for that food. It kind of knows it's primary goal is to eventually leave a planet that's trying to kill it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I keep thinking about the research process and I think, wow, it's amazing.
Well, thanks. I just want to be a contributor to
Yeah.
knowledge and the awareness of, why we're here. And I think that's a very unifying concept. Once this concept, if it finds itself to be valid and become impermeated within everyone's mind on Earth, we'd all work together
Mm.
in this inevitable outcome and learn to appreciate not only the existence of our own lives, but the entire process that it took for our own lives to become a part of it.
So, in order to achieve the goal, we have to reach maximum conscious growth. And can you tell us a little bit about that and
Yeah.
what that would actually look like?
Well, maximum conscious growth is what's obvious, what the product of the Big Bang is. So if you have the Big Bang, you start very slow and small, you develop consciousness itself, and then it develops as a growth product. Well, when does that end? There's really no gauge to it because we don't really know what post terrestrial life is or what it's like. But the same stressors for existence will remain because the universe spells that out for everything that's organically alive. And the stressors, in order to survive post Earth, will be, what they are. It's the engine for conscious growth to always constantly survive these stressors. But if you're going to live in a spaceship for the next 3 trillion years, the
Mm.
only real idea that I can come up with is the end of light, which is scheduled, like the end of Earth.
Mm.
There's a scheduled calendar for the end of light. It's 3 trillion years, and there will not be a single star left to view from your spaceship.
Oh, wow.
See, yeah, so that's getting to the point of maximum conscious growth. Or the other way of looking at maximum conscious growth is say there's another planet like Earth, and that human life form did not become successful with leaving their Earth technologically before it burned up.
Hmm.
See, then that would be the maximum conscious growth that planet achieved.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. And
Got
if
it.
you're successful from surviving the end of your planet, then you can continue on to whatever the maximum is. And the intent is to grow a maximum to its very maximum. And why would anybody do this? Why would anybody set this system in formation? Because obviously it's like a crop. And in the end, it could be something that I call the unigalactic conscious harvest.
Okay. Uh,
Okay.
now, now, one thing I will say is you use a lot of acronyms, and in order to get the most out of your book, for me, I had to like let go of the fact that I'm not going to memorize what all those
Mm,
acronyms mean and are, because that
hmm.
would prohibit me. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I can get too wrapped up in the details to see kind of the big picture. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're telling me this because I don't know what the layman or the beginner's
Yeah.
experience is anymore. I'm just so
Yeah.
that I'm glad to hear this.
It's good that they're there and that you have them, to refer back to. I guess is ultimately what I'm saying, that, you don't need to remember it all in order to get it. Just let go of what you don't
Yes,
know.
yes. Well, the easy answer to that is that when you're going to put together evidence like this, it's got to stick with science, and it's really this book is just a humongous science paper. Is all it is.
Hmm.
And it's required to obtain all this stuff. So basically, it's also a textbook. So if there's ever a curriculum to teach for this, it's probably a 1 or 2 year course. So you're just
Yeah.
looking at a textbook, and you're not going to join it as a course. But unfortunately, the very first book has to be that, and that's what you're suffering from.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say it's not an issue. It's just that's a scientific book. And the way I want to read it, the way I learn is I want to wrap my head around everything before I move on. And I realized that that wasn't possible for me to do with this book. We all learn differently, right? So,
Yeah, well, this is very scientific. So if you're not a scientist, if you don't have a degree in science, it's going to be like your experience is.
yeah.
But just think about all the people who do have degrees in science, in
Yeah.
biology and astrobiology. They're going to really be able to hang with it. And that's what it's for, is to really find its way in science for real. And my only comparison to that is the origin of species from Darwin.
Mm.
It took 20 years for science to really start to apply this evidence and slowly change the reality of how science viewed mankind in that new perspective. So this has the same challenge. I don't think science is going to really be able to help me find out the rights and wrongs about this evidence. I'm not saying that I've discovered this thing, but I'm asking,
Right.
here's evidence. What is this? And through the next 10 or 15 years, science will have to go, okay, this is relevant and this is not. And then it'll find its place. But it's going to take a long time. Anyhow, there will be other books to simplify fungus theory. Like the book I'm trying to write now is Fungus Theory Explained.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to start somewhere. Hard
Absolutely.
book.
Yeah. So my mind keeps going back to urgency. I mean, is it urgent like in our lifetime? Probably not, but it could be. Like if, we had World War III or something like that.
That's it.
Talk us through that a little bit, I guess.
Okay. In 250 million to 350 million years from today, the Earth's waters on the equator will start to boil. And that means that it will condense into a cloud around the Earth, heating it up even more and quickly evaporating the rest of the water, and
Mm,
will become Venus.
mm,
This is only in 350 million years from now. And this was validated through Elon Musk in one of his conversations as well. And I was surprised to hear it because I had come up with it myself first, thinking, well, okay, he's onto this too. So, with that being an absolute window of carbon life form existence, great, we have all that time, but kind of not really because self annihilation, well, obviously, what's happening in the Middle East right now is an example of that potential.
right.
And we are not done with cosmic debris. We're going to get hit by, a comet. We are. It's not finished. And neither is mass extinctions. They're coming. If you look at the previous calendar, you can spell out the future, and there's absolute things going to happen. So the urgency that you're talking about is true within the government, and you can see them react to certain things right now
Hmm.
because that's their main goal is survival, and for the rest of humanity. So that's already number one. Us as citizens, we're not completely engulfed in all this. We're trying to have babies, and that's engulfing. You can't do both.
Mm,
And so, as an entire human culture, we just work together to survive the elements. But even worse about what you're saying with urgency is we don't know if that comet is going to come next year or if these nuclear bombs are going to go off, this month or in a year from now. We don't know. So the urgency really relies in being prepared.
yeah. It could be out of our control.
Do you see how random and insecuring it is? And that's the stressor that the fungus uses. So this large fungus, which is all plant and life animal together, uses these stressors to enforce the action of innovation and technology. It's
Yeah.
almost a chemical reaction,
Okay.
not to depreciate the value of free will, because we do have free will, because joy is the evidence of free will, but you're limited on what that freedom is.
Right. Tell us about how emotional expression, creativity, storytelling, how does all that function within the system?
That's my favorite part because I'm a story writer. So I'll just use you as a reference. So all of your intelligence and concerns about being a human today came from storytelling, all of it.
Mm,
So without story, there is no growth whatsoever. So that's the value of story. And everything is a story. If you're learning statistics or any kind of learning process, you're just hearing the story of previous discoveries, outcomes. And so that's the learning process. It's all a story. But the emotionality is this: if you have 20 people in a room and you tell them a story, only one person is generally going to become emotionally inspired to react to that story. So
mm,
that is a part of the majority of society where one person will be the activist emotionally, and that's message sending, and message sending is storytelling.
hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it also describes human inspiration. If you have millions of humans and nobody's really reacting to anything, human inspiration shows in the futurism of one individual responding to the potential of a disaster or the high concern for saving life. This is an emotional reaction that's greater than the rest of the populace. So that's where
Okay.
you can see that human inspiration really is the spark of innovation and the invention of technology in order to eventually leave Earth safely.
Hmm. I mean, I'm just thinking, wow.
I
Highly technical terms.
I'm really learning how to simplify things through this
Oh,
process, this
good. Oh,
interview.
good. I'm your
uh,
test pilot, or yeah. And I think that's good. But your book is not geared toward the layman, though. I mean,
No, it's a science paper.
yeah, yeah,
And the reason why, if I came out with this other explanatory process of, it would just sound experimental, it would sound, like philosophy, it would sound like, oh, this guy's got a dreamy idea. So I really had to nail the science down. And that's what the book is about. It's
yeah,
about the science, that's the facts that are really showing this to be a reality the best I can in the
yeah.
first time around. So
Otherwise, people would think, well, it's science fiction. But,
yeah, and what I've learned is that the science community is more competitive than Hollywood. So somebody would have stolen the idea, and there I would have been, just the guy with the idea, and no
yeah.
real relevance, right?
How do you balance speculation with real world observation in building a system like this?
Well, it was challenging in the writing process to eliminate anything that would be a potential theory or a philosophy, to nail down real evidence that would be described as the reality behind it. I had a wonderful editor who has a science degree. He was graduating at the same time and helping me edit, but he was helping me understand that a lot of what I was trying to say was speculative. So he was instrumental in helping me really filter all that out so that
Mm,
when these points of reality and evidence hit your subconscious, it's going to go to work without you really knowing it or not. And one year after another, you'll be able to slowly apply, oh, yeah, the earth does really end. And once you can, it takes a year to do that. And then once you do that, it's like, okay, now I can start applying all the evidence that shows fungus theory. And I would warn readers too that if you're skeptical that the earth does end or not, then you're going to have a hard time with the rest of the material.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The world will end. I guess to tag on that a little bit is for a skeptic approaching this work in good faith, where do you suggest they begin?
Here's what I'm learning from readers so far. If you read from beginning to end, it's going to be this just massive thing. It's like going to school and reading trigonomics for a year is very boring. So, what I would do is I would read from header to header and just read the ones that are interesting to you.
Mm,
For instance, how to stay in space forever. Well, that's kind of interesting. Just read below that header, whether it's a page or two or 3 pages or five, and just do that. And then on another day, go through the book and find another header that's interesting to you, because you are conscious growth yourself, but you're only conscious of so much. So once you become conscious of one element within the book, now you've grown consciously and are more capable of the other conscious growth elements. Does that make
okay.
sense?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does. Yeah. And you want to learn more. The more you learn, the more you want to learn.
Yeah. So the layman approach would be just, read through the headers to find out which one interests you. And eventually you'll get through the whole book, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had any skeptics?
Not yet, just some verbal responses to, I don't believe that.
Mm,
But it was just me talking. Strangely enough, everybody's pretty open to it. Not that they're agreeing with it right away. And my father's a great example because he's a very fixed man and it's a very secure life for him raising a family. It's taken about 3 or 4 years to finally get some things to sink in, but he's starting to agree with it. And
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to the whole evolution of man from the beginning of time. He's of a different generation. My mom's of a different generation. They don't view things the way we do. You
Yeah,
know.
we're all experiencing that. But see, their consciousness existence focused on a certain form of technologies. And once that cognitive thinking happens to that individual during that time period, it becomes locked. And they can't conceive any more technology. It's called conscious plateau. And every one of us do it. But when you become consciously plateaued, you're no longer useful in the growth of technology. And what I mean by that is the new technology.
Mm,
So the newcomers, which is everybody, born, see a completely different perspective because of the previous technology. They become aware of it and innovative and add to it. And then that's the new technology that generation sees. But they also grow old with it. And I call it a signified identity with that technology. Once you become signified, you can no longer grow with new technology and you consciously
mm.
plateau and move on. And it's kind of a baton tossed to the new generation all of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what we do with everything. Next
Yes.
generation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a
Now,
simple idea.
yeah. You mentioned another book. I was thinking a couple of things because I'm sure your research continues.
Hmm.
So, what happens to your book? Do you put out new revisions periodically? Do you write new books, like add on, like, book two, book three, or how do you envision that's going to work for you?
Well, what I'm trying to do is actually just do segments of the book as entire books. So,
Oh,
like Maximum Conscious Growth is a book, right? Just to
yeah.
study that. So I had to spend those years condensing everything in one book so that it's a structure. And so now I can deliver each department independently.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. That would be very helpful, I think, in the understanding of the whole theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Nice.
Tin Can
Okay.
Man will be one book.
I love the Tin Can Man.
Thanks.
The idea of it.
It
I don't
needs
know.
visualaries wherever you can
It
apply them.
is. Yes, yes. Tell us a little bit about the next book.
Well, in this current book, there's what they're called TLDRs, and that
Mm-hmm.
means too long didn't read. And I thought that was important to put under pretty much every header so that rather than to get into all the scientific language and details of the evidence, you could get summarized right away about what it is you're about to read. And so that is what the next book's going to do. It's going to be basically kind of the book in too long didn't read format. So it's more of an explanation with evidence rather than this, science paper level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you're in the process of writing that now. Do you have an end date in mind, or you're just going to let it happen as it happens?
Yeah, it's going to grow like a fungus.
Yeah.
So any piece of work tells you how long it's going to take. So I don't really have a date and it's got to be right. So
Right.
just working
Right.
on it.
Okay. And I want to mention to listeners that we have a full interview with Mark on our website, and I'll include that link at the bottom of this podcast. And then where else can people go if they want to learn more?
They can go to my website, marklchristensen.com. And this is just my first year of launching all of this. So I've got a lot of developing to do, but you can go there and see some more material. And then, of course, the social media stuff's going to start happening this year too.
Okay, great. Well, Mark, is there anything else you wanted to add today?
Yeah, as these ideas take over in your mind as realities, just remember that I think, it's the unification of mankind coming together and focusing on one goal. And that one serious goal is to find a way for humanity to survive the end of its terrestrial life form.
Mm,
That's important. And no one's focusing on it yet. But I think it's more important than religion because, as a reference, we need to take the Bible with us,
mm,
right?
hmm Well, Mark, it has truly been a pleasure. I love what you're doing, and I thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Very bold for you to be doing this, and you've done a great job. I'm always surprised that you really are connecting with it fungally.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Mark L. Christensen, author of Fungus Theory of Conscious Growth. You can learn more about Mark and his work at marklchristensen.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.